with all that's going on in the world around us, one of the things that I'm finding is this. It doesn't matter who you are, what country you're from, what city you live in, what town, how big or how small your family is. Everybody is looking for hope. Everybody's trying to make sense of what's going on. It's amazing to me how many of us rejoice over gas prices going down under $5. What does that tell me? That tells me that our standards of hope have dropped greatly. But yet, everybody is looking for hope. And I want to share this with you. The church, the bride of Christ, the people who have put their faith in Jesus Christ, you and me, as messed up as we are, the church is still the most powerful and most effective agent for change in the world today. And I truly believe that with my whole heart. And what I want to tell you is this. God did not lose. He hasn't lost the battle. We're not experiencing the end of the story. And so today what we're going to see is how Jesus' upside-down kingdom, how it reveals who we are as the church, and how God is still at work today. And so we're only going to look at a few verses, but they're amazing verses, like they all are. But there's just something so special that I think it's something that God said, hey, if this is the last thing that you say, this is it. So the first of the last three things that I'm going to say to you is this. You are salt. Verse 13, Matthew chapter 5. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. It's kind of an interesting verse, don't you think? Notice what Jesus said, because if you have a paper Bible, especially one that has the red letters, what you're going to see is this chapter is all red. So this is all the things that Jesus said. And so, first of all, the best thing I could ever tell you is what Jesus told you. And so he says, you are salt. Notice he didn't say salty. There is a difference. Some of you just simply are salty all the time. And I love you, but I'm just going to tell you how it is. You need to know being salty is not being salt. But Jesus says, you are salt. You are salt. Kind of a strange statement, don't you think? Like, I've been called many things, but salt? So what do we know about salt? I mean, if Jesus says that's who we are, what do we know about salt? And I want to start back in the first century, because that's when this was written, to these Jewish people, to these people who were hearing this for the first time, to hear that they were salt. What they would have understood is that one of the things that Jesus was saying to them is this: as salt is a precious commodity, so are you. Salt in that day was very valuable. Roman soldiers were often paid with salt. You've heard that phrase, he's worth his salt? That's where it comes from. Because they would pay their soldiers with salt. So, at first when he said you are salt, you're like, oh, that's kind of weird. But what he's saying, number one, is you're precious. You're valuable. You have value in what I'm doing and in this world. The second thing that we know about salt is that salt promotes thirst. You're going to see a bunch of P words, just in case you were wondering. Precious, promotes, things like that, because I'm pretty clever. Not really. I have a I can't even say it. I have a thesaurus. I have one of those things that you can just type it in and it'll tell you other words. But it promotes thirst. Now, as salt, what we should do is be promoting Jesus are living water. It's not about promoting us. When we promote ourselves, that's when we become salty. But when we promote Jesus, all of a sudden, what was salty now becomes sweet and becomes something that people are longing for. So every one of us should carry a bottle of living water with us. Think about that. We should carry Jesus with us. And we should promote him. Salt also preserves. It slows decay. So when Jesus said that you are salt, what he's saying is that your life has a preserving influence in the culture that we live in and in the world we live in. Why? Because your life promotes Jesus. And only Jesus can truly quench thirst. I mean, how many of us have tried to quench our thirst with other things? Anybody ever tried to quench your thirst with salt water? Doesn't work very well. But it preserves. We have a preserving influence in the world and the culture around us. Salt impacts your palate. See, I had to come up with a clever P word there. Palate was the best I could come up with. You're like, yeah, you like to eat. I could tell. You're right. I do like to eat. But this one, this is where it comes to me. This became very personal. You guys have heard my stories about growing up as a kid. I'm Portuguese, so we would go to the Portuguese picnic there in Castro Valley. And the way the Portuguese picnic worked was each family was designated an area, and you'd show up and you'd put all your food there, and believe me, there was a lot of food. And then the guys would go and they would barbecue the spit meat, not spit meat, spit meat. You got to say it right. The women would go play bingo, and then the kids would go play in the playground, or your uncles and your aunts, they would give you dollar bills. And I kid you not, as a kid, what I did for entertainment in the summer was I went to this place that it was a booth with 3 walls that were just a tarp with salami sticks hanging from it. And you stood about 10 feet from this, and for $1, you got 5 red potatoes. And you threw the potatoes at the salami stick, and if you hit a stick, they gave you a stick. That was my entertainment as a kid. And you wonder why I'm weird. That's it. But I got pretty good at it. And I knew that all my uncles, they only cared if they got 1 stick, and they were happy. So they're giving me 20s. I would leave with $100 because I'd get 4 or 5 sticks right off the bat and just pocket the cash and give them the salami. It was great. But I moved my grandmother, my Nana. I moved her from her house there in the Del Webb in Manteca to Cozier. She's not in assisted living. She's in independent living at Cozier. She makes that very clear. And I hate moving people. And I hated moving all that stuff. But there was one thing that she said, hey, I've got these things. I got Papa's spit meat skewers. Now, all I remember about my grandfather was at that day, on that picnic, he would grab a 5-gallon bucket of rock salt. And spit meat is simply big chunks of tri-tip. So you would see all these guys carrying their skewers, rock salt, and the spit meat. Now, I got to show you this skewer because it'll give you some understanding of the girth that I now have. This is a spit meat skewer. I mean, come on. That's a 5-foot. How big was that barbecue? I never went to it. And he has 2 or 3 of these. And there's hundreds of guys with 2 or 3 of these. That's a lot of dead cow. That is the coolest thing. But I look at this and I just, what I think of is that and how, we showed up and as kids we had no idea what they would do or where it was. But what we knew is that what they brought back was something so amazing. I would encourage you, just try this. Just take a tri-tip, cut it into chunks. You don't have to have a skewer like that. Roll it in rock salt, and then barbecue it on the grill. It's amazing. Because what salt does is it impacts our palate. It should be, it should have a taste to it that is we long for. And so when Jesus says that you are salt, he says there's something about your life that should leave a good taste in people's mouth. Salt purifies. Anybody ever used a neti pot? Dude, that's the most amazing invention on the face of the earth. I love it. I just can't wait to wake up in the morning to use it. Everybody, my kids look at me, Dad, you're gross. And now I don't have the little pot that you put, they have the ones that look like a teapot and they're little dainty looking things. Not me. I got the bottle so that you can squeeze it and get the pressure. And it's awesome because I sit there over the sink like this. I got the salt and I squeeze this thing and it's like a rocket jet engine. And the stuff that comes out, it's disgusting. But there's something amazing about the feeling. You guys are like, you're sick. Man, I'm giving you all. This is all I got. This is the last time. This is it. Right? But that salt, as it goes through the nasal passages, it cleans everything out. I can breathe freely. I'm amazed at it's just such, I just love it. They have one, I guess, that's like, you could battery operate it. I just saw this. And then I saw one that it goes over both and it pushes and sucks at the same time. I'm not going to lie. I almost bought it. It was $199. I'm like, no, I'll just squeeze the bottle. You see, we live in a decaying culture, and God has chosen us, his church, to impact the world. And he says that we are salt, meaning that he's given us everything that we need to accomplish what he's asked us to do. Notice he didn't say, you are perfect. No, he said, you are salt. It's interesting because he says, you're the salt of the earth. And then the next word he says, but. Anytime you come to the word but in the Bible, you know it's going to be a bummer. He says, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? So we're told that salt could lose its flavor. So what we should be asking ourselves is, have I lost my saltiness? Have I lost really sight of what God has asked me to do? And I think what happens is sometimes we try to be something that we're not, or we wish we could be something different. Both of which have the same foundation, and that is, I'm not okay with who God created me to be. But I want to tell you, one of the things I'm looking at right now, from my perspective, is God's most beautiful creation, who he didn't make a mistake creating. That you were created in his image, and he's got a plan for your life. So I started thinking, why does salt lose its saltiness? And my conclusion was this: salt loses its saltiness when we try to do salty things, or try to water it down. And when we try to do salty things, we become salty. And when we try to water it down and dilute it, we don't have much saltiness. It's kind of gross. So, back in the day, salt would lose its saltiness, I think, two ways: impurities and delusion. But can a salt regain its saltiness? It's a question to consider. Part of me would say no, It can't regain its saltiness. But part of me says, well, why couldn't God? So I can't give you a definite answer to that, but what I can tell you is this. What I do know is that if I look at my life and say, hey, have I lost that saltiness in my life? Have I become diluted or impure? I know this, that at any given time, God can allow me and calls me to a life of repentance. Repentance, which then removes the impurities, but repentance also causes me to stop diluting what is already there. To allow God to do what he's already done and live in the fullness of that. And as I stop watering it down, and if I remove the impurities, you know what? I'm just salt. I don't have to be anything else. What kind of salt am I? Am I purified salt, iodized salt, sea salt? I'm probably salted caramel. I don't know. But we're salt. And here's what I want to tell you. The world is hoping that we will be the salt of the earth because of what salt does. The world is hoping that we will be the salt of the earth because what the world is hoping is that as salt, we will see people as precious. That as salt, we will promote Jesus who loves, redeem, and dwells with his creation whom he loves. That as salt, we will be about the preservation of life. That salt, recognizing that impurities are, that purity is a process, and that we're willing to walk with people for and through that purification process. That we won't give up on people. So, you are salt. Be salt. Don't be salty. The second thing that I would like to leave with you, if it's the last thing, you are light. You are light. Verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do you light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. You are light. When Jesus said that, he was giving us a huge compliment, but also a huge responsibility. Because by saying that you are light, what he is saying is that you are what he claimed to be in John chapter 8 and 9. He said, I am the light of the world. And now he's saying, you are light. But being light, like he is light, that's a huge responsibility. We are the light of the world. We're not only light receivers, but we're also light givers. We don't just receive the light, but we give light. Meaning we have a greater concern for the world around us and for the people that God brings in our life, that what we want to do and our desire is to shine the love of Christ in the midst of a dark world. Our lives were not intended just to be lived for ourselves, but for others. And what I love about this passage is that Jesus never challenged us to become salt or to become light. He simply said, we are salt. We are light. The key behind that is that we're distinct. We're different. And one of the things that I know is that we will never affect the world by becoming like the world. We will never affect the world by becoming like the world. But what I'm finding is the world doesn't want us to be like them. So don't believe those lies. So many people, if they listen to the media or the news, they get discouraged because, they're trying to push their agendas on us. No, they don't want us to be like them. Because what I'm finding is they are just as tired of the broken systems as we are. And they're hoping that we will be different so that they can have hope. Because we're all living in the same messed up world with the same broken systems. The purpose of light is to illuminate and to expose what's there. We illuminate the love of Jesus and we expose the bondage that sin has created. We love the person and we expose the sin. Paul put it this way, that people have suppressed the truth of God for a lie. And as we love them, what we're simply doing is we're asking them, why have you done that? I love you enough to ask the question because I know where this sin is going to lead you. I know the end of that, but I love you enough to ask you the question so that I can walk through life with you as God begins to purify you, as you begin to understand that you are loved by God, and that if you put your faith in Jesus, you can have your thirst quenched by the living water. But it's a process. We've got to walk with people. But if a life is hidden under a basket, it's no longer useful. Actually, it's quite dangerous if you think about it. Because what we think of when we think of lights is, I flipped on that switch and the light bulb came on and I'm going to put it under a basket. Lights back then weren't like that. PG&E didn't exist when Jesus was walking the earth. It was an oil lamp. And a basket was woven with some sort of leaf of some sort of, probably a palm branch. And if you took a fire and put it a basket made of dried palm leaves, what's going to happen? It's going to ignite. It doesn't work that way. It might snuff it out if it was tight enough basket and you couldn't get the oxygen. But lights were not intended to be hidden. Now, so many people have told me this. Well, my faith is a personal thing. I understand what you're saying. I get that. Yes, your salvation is a personal thing between you and God, but your life is different. And I know we throw that out there, but how do you look at this and say, how does that happen? What does it mean that your life is a personal thing? How does this statement that Jesus made here fit with that statement? I love what Charles Spurgeon said. He said, Christ never contemplated the production of secret Christians whose virtues would never be displayed, pilgrims who would travel to heaven by night and never be seen by their fellow pilgrims or anyone else. Meaning our life is meant to be lived in front of people. And you know what that means? All of our life. That means our failures and our victories, our mistakes and those great moments of faith. Remember that the more lights that we bring together in one place, the greater the illumination. We need each other. And salt and light remind us that the life marked by the Beatitudes is not to be lived in isolation. It's to be lived for the world to see on display. Oftentimes we think that all these qualities, these inner qualities are only developed in private. But Jesus wants us to live them out before a world. He says we're a city on a hill and that it cannot be hidden. A prominent city can't be hidden, especially at night, huh? I'll never get tired of it, but if I'm driving to the valley at night, and just as you crest over that hill in Copper and you start dropping down, you can just see the lights, and there's just something about it. There's something that just takes your breath away. And that's how our life is as believers. It's this place where we are, when people see us all together, they're just in awe of what God has done. Jesus' kingdom people live their lives in a way that promotes Jesus' beauty. That's what he's saying. We don't light our lamp and put it under a basket, but we put it on a lampstand. And this means that we need to be intentional about letting our light shine. We need to realize that every day and every moment of every day, there's going to be an opportunity for that light to shine. There's going to be people that come in and out of your life that is an opportunity for them to see that your light is shining. And you know where they see it the most? On your face. Through your eyes and through the smile, through your posture. Through the fact that if you just simply take time to listen to somebody. When you do things that the world doesn't do. And as lamps, Jesus does this. He elevates us to a place that He has chosen to place us so that our light can be seen. So what you need to understand is that every opportunity that you're given is God divine. God divinely giving you an opportunity so that you can be on full display at that moment. Because God knows the person who you're talking to and that He knows what they need to see. And what He knows is they need to see you. Crazy. But see the value that God places on His people? So what we need to do is put our lives in the hands of Jesus, allowing Him to place us where He sees is the best fit place for us to be. And then just trust Him. But let's look at His example. Jesus brought the light of His deity into the lantern of humanity. That everywhere He went, He saw it as an opportunity to love people. He set it upon the candlestick of the cross, that through His church the whole world might be lit up. But because of the cross, He redeemed His church, and now He uses us as the light of the world. So know this, you are light. So place your life/light in the hands of Jesus and allow Him to put you where He will. The last thing, if this is the last thing I ever tell you, and look, I'm going to give you hope, it's not that long. It's your time to shine. It's your time to shine. Verse 16, let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Let your light shine isn't referring to something that you have to make happen. It's just what you do. Light shines. Light shines. Actually, you have to do the opposite. You have to try to hide light. You don't have to try to make it shine. The objective here is not that men would see how good you are or even see you at all. It's not about you. I know that's hard for some of you to hear. Your life is not about you. Right? Any man who's been married for longer than 20 seconds knows that. It's not about you. Any parent knows, that it's not about you. But our lives are not about us at all. They're about the Father who loves us, who sent His Son to redeem us, who sent His Spirit to seal us. It's about the triune God who came and dwelt with His creation. Put that light inside of us so that we could shine. The objective is not that men would see how good you are or even see you at all, but that they may see God's grace in us. And I love you guys, but I'm telling you what, God needed a whole lot of grace in this room. He really did. I know me. And that in and of itself is a lot of grace. You don't believe me? Ask my kids. Ask my wife. They'll tell you. Ask my mother-in-law. She'd be glad to tell you. My father-in-law loves me. Just telling you. I'm filling all the last voids here if you can't see it. I've got, But what people need to see is God's grace in us. So how can we be the salt or light of the world? How does that happen? It's just who we are, first and foremost. But let's just simplify it. It's by being, not doing. Just be you. But you don't know my flaws or my cracks. Yeah, I do. I talk to your wife. I've talked to your kids. Kids are the darndest, aren't they? I remember when I did youth group and I had this guys' discipleship group. And this one kid in particular, he came up to me and he's like, dude, we got to pray for my parents. They're really fighting. And I'm like, all right, let's pray for your parents. I'm like, what's going on? And this is how attentive these kids are. Now, mind you, he's like 15, 16. He's like, dude, my mom wants my dad to wear the pants, but she won't take them off and give them to him. I was like, that is awesome. Like, that is so cool that you saw that. But we need to live our lives in such a way where God's grace is on full display. It's by being, not doing. And this is what I want you to know. There's a world that's hoping you will just be the light of the world and you will be able to be the salt. So if I never say another thing to you, remember these words. You are precious and loved by Jesus, who created you, redeemed you, and dwells within you. And he has given you a message that has the power to preserve, purify, and change lives. It's the message of the gospel. And that message is still good news today. I read this in 2 Corinthians 7:16 this morning in my devotions. Paul talking to the church there, he says, therefore, I rejoice that I have confidence in you in everything. And I feel that. I have confidence in you in everything. Guys, it's your time to shine. It's your time. It's your time to shine. But remember this. Greater is he that is in you than he that is in the world. 1 John 4:4. So you got this. You got this. So be salt. Be light. And watch how God uses you to impact the world around you.